Okay, I think we are good and live. Rabbi Professor, hello Max. Rabbi Professor Jeffrey Woolf, Shalom Aleichem. Good to see you.
Nice to be back. It's a long time.
Yes, it has. It has been a while. Life's been busy. Yeah. I know I've been sick also part of the time. So
and you were also in America doing all kinds of important things,
right? And we had Hanukkah in between as well.
Also true.
So a lot going on, but a pleasure back, and so much to talk about, so much to hear about your thoughts. And like we just said, I want to start with the positive.
Okay.
I want to start with the positive. And the positive is the unbelievable excitement in the air because of the finishing of the Talmud, the Siyam HaShas. Last night we had this amazing event in Yerushalayim of the women finishing Daf Yomi, and last week it was the men's celebration, and it's just the celebration of Torah and the excitement of Torah. Again, thanks to social media, it's just come to a whole new level, and that's like a Kiddush Hashem of social media, of the internet. Love to hear your thoughts about this as well.
It's look at the prophet Isaiah at the in the end of chapter 11, when he talks about the Mashiach. He says that the ultimate vision is going to be that when the word of God encompasses the earth, as the waters cover the earth. So this is really amazing. I was watching yesterday a few videos that were screened actually for the Agudat Yisrael ceremony completing Shas, which got a lot of press because it was 92,000 people that filled Met Stadium. To them, you have to actually add the parallel events in cities around the country, right, where it was live. It was a live feed. And the truth of the matter is that the exponential way that this thing has spread is like not to be believed. It just in the United States. Let's forget about before the war. In the United States, the first ceremony marking the completion of the Shas in the 1960s had like a few thousand people.
The first one in America was the 1960s.
In the people were learning the page a day, this Daf Yomi, since 1923.
Right.
But the first really big ones I understand were sponsored by the sponsoring organization Agudat Yisrael, which is an ultra-Orthodox radio organization. They started doing them in the 50s, and they were small. They were small, and then slowly but surely, exponentially, they grew from like 5,000, where they held it. I don't remember where the first one was, and then they went to a smaller places in Manhattan, a little larger places in Manhattan, and then they went to Felt Forum, which doesn't exist anymore, which was part of the Madison Square Garden complex. They had 10,000, and that was considered to be crazy. 7 years later, they were already in Madison Square Garden, and they filled up the whole garden. That's again I think it's the old garden, so I have no idea how people it held. And then it was the new Madison Square Garden, because in 7 years you can do a lot of building there. So, and then they started going to Coliseum. Until finally, I guess it was last year, they had the first one in Met Stadium, which is 92,000 people.
MetLife. Right, 7.5 years ago, you mean?
7.5 years ago was the first one, and now this time.
Right.
And they filled it last time also. But what's really, I think social media really has made a difference here, but whatever the reason is, it's become a thing. And it's not just a matter of Orthodox Jews doing it, starting Orthodox men. It's also a matter of, I know a bunch of non-Orthodox rabbis who've done it. There was a guy whose name is Adam Kirsch, who did it for Tablet Magazine. He's just an intelligent Jewish person who wanted to do this. And in the meantime, the tools for doing it have just expanded.
Right.
In addition to the Schottenstein Talmud, which takes up like 3 shelves on a regular Talmud like mine is sitting on the
one
shelf over there, takes up a little. Well, unfortunately, the guy who made my shelves made it just a little bit too narrow. So all the volumes are there, 1 through 19, and 20 is over there.
Right, got it.
But anyways, but the Schottenstein takes up a lot more space. The Hebrew takes up less space than the English, actually. Anyways, but also the Schottenstein. Then there's the classic translation into Hebrew of Rabbi Adinstein Zaltz Eben Yisrael, which was translated into English
As well.
recently. So the tools are there, and there were internet sites. It's all kinds of things, and there were classes online at all kinds of levels, which leads to the next to really the revolutionary thing that happened yesterday, which is that there were 3,000 women crammed into the Jerusalem Convention Center, that's known as Binyanei Haoma, the buildings of the nation here, and celebrated the fact that women have completed, many women, thousands of women have completed the study of the Talmud from beginning to end as well. Much of this facilitated by the internet, because there is one woman, Rabbanit Michelle Farber from Ra'anana, who sends out classes in English and in Hebrew. But that's really remarkable because certainly until the 20th century, women did not study Talmud. There were negative things said about women studying Talmud in the Talmud itself, and it just wasn't considered to be their métier. In the 20th century, the pioneer, not the first person to do this, but the pioneer who felt that women should get the same kind of education as men was my teacher, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, who basically said that it's ridiculous for women to become advanced scientists and lawyers and judges and everything else under the sun, and to have their religious knowledge, their knowledge of Judaism, to be on a much more elementary or much more limited basis. So he was the one who instituted, along with a few other people at the time, the study of Talmud in coeducational settings in his day school that he created in Boston. Now, there's a difference in day school, which is a little bit less parochial than say a yeshiva, but the women literally got the same education. In fact, at one point they asked Rabbi Soloveitchik, maybe it would be better if the classes were split. The question of coeducation, separate education is another issue. But when it was made clear to him that the women might get a less quality education if they split the classes, he said no.
Interesting.
So it starts there. And then here in Israel, it really took off. Not in Haredi ultra-Orthodox circles, although that's beginning as well, but more in really Zionist and modern Orthodox circles. The pioneer really here was Rabbi Chaim Bravender, who set up a yeshiva for women in the 70s already. And in the States, there was a school, which still exists, but is sort of closing down, named Jerisha, which was started by Rabbi David Silver, which I actually had the privilege of teaching in off and on for many, many years. In fact, their first kollel, their first sort of intensive institute, I was one of the two mentors for that program in the 1980s. And slowly but surely, the idea that women study Gemara began to take off. And as I don't want to call it hype, but as the enthusiasm for Daf Yomi developed, more and more women joined. And there were more and more schools for advanced Talmud study in Israel. One of them started right across the way in the kibbutz Migdal Oz. The person who gave it its real serious push in this country was Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who was Rabbi Soloveitchik's son-in-law. And the school that actually trains women on high-level Talmud study is his daughter, Rabbanit Esti Rosenberg. So you talk about things going, but it's even more than that, because the idea that people should go to classes and study Torah is become much more not just acceptable, but the norm here. You can go to a Daf Yomi, you can go to a daily class in Talmud, and you'll find people sitting with guys sitting there without yarmulkes. You have classes sitting where people are men and women. It's become a real thing, and that's really incredible when you consider the fact that one of the major problems in the United States is abject Jewish ignorance. And here I have to toot Israel's horn. Here, the push for Jewish literacy has increased very, very significantly. We have a lot more to do. Part of one of the things maybe we'll talk about is that the cultural wars in Israel have sort of revved up again here. And part of the cultural wars is due to the fact that those who are against Judaism in the public square are just incredibly ignorant of anything Jewish and what it means. But anyways, but on the happy side, so you're talking to people all over the place, and there are signs in the streets, congratulations to the people who study the Talmud. And the truth of the matter is, it's a real achievement.
I see you're sort of tearing.
I'm tearing because it's beautiful to see. I never would have imagined it. And also because I'm a little jealous, because I've been studying the Gemara since I was 15 and a half years old. And I got to study with the greatest minds, or one of the greatest minds of the generation, of the previous generation. And I have never gone through it. I mean, I've finished many, many tractates, but I've never gone from brachot to nida, from beginning to end. I'm going to try this time. A part of it's because my certain lack of discipline. The other reason is because the way I was trained is that you don't just sort of go through and you don't surf through the sea of the Talmud. On the top of the sea of the Talmud, you dive and you swim and you go underwater.
That's
and you
a very
go
good
deep
analogy.
and you go deep and you pick up the pearls and the corals along the way. And once you get into it, you realize that every word refers to something else, and so you go elsewhere. And so I study twice a week in the local yeshiva Har Etzion, and I study whatever tractate they're studying, but I don't follow whatever they're doing. I just sort of let myself go. So you end up, this looks interesting. Let's go over here. It's very ADD. It's for a person who's ADD. It's built for ADD because you're going all over the place. Because the Talmud is viewed as a total whole. So you start in one tractate, something comes up, and in order to properly understand it, you go elsewhere over there. And every place has different commentaries. So it's really something. On the other hand, if you go through something more than once, you find something every single time. So today happens to be page 3. Okay, the Talmud. The traditional pagination of the Talmud is actually. The truth of the matter is this is a standard publisher's thing. If you buy any book, the first page is usually like page 5 or something. The question is why? So the answer is because they count the title page and the copyright page, and those are also pages. So you never end up starting right at the beginning. So in the Talmud, we don't go. It's called a folio organization. Folio means, if those of you know Shakespeare, that's how Shakespeare was published. Also in folio editions, where you print on both sides of the page, but you count each sheet of paper, and then you count the columns. So in the classic editions of Shakespeare, you'll see Shakespeare, Hamlet. If they don't give you the act something, scene something, they'll tell you it's page something A, B, C, or D, because it was printed in 4 columns. So A and B on one side and C and D on the other side. So the Talmud, when it first began to be printed in a serious, consistent manner by the Soncino family, their name was Despira, but they were living in Soncino, and by the Soncino family, they organized the material on the page of the Talmud, and the first page of text is 2, because the title page is 1, Aleph, and then Bet. And then Bet has 2 sides. Bet Amud Aleph, Bet side 1, and Bet side 2. So today's the second day. We're doing side. Which is really page 2, which is Gimel 3A and B. And I think I know that I've looked at this text. I don't know, 100 times.
Right.
And I saw something today
Right.
I had never seen before.
Right.
There's a story there that describes nighttime. It's actually very poetic. The Talmud describes how would you, in a day before there were mechanical clocks. We have digital clocks, mechanical clocks.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have, I don't know, we used to have to wind up the clock. We used to have the little thingy here. You used to wind it up. And when my grandfather, may rest in peace, had a self-winding watch. So if you moved your arm, it would wind itself. That was considered the height of technology. In any event, how did people know what time it was when it came to
telling time?
Telling time. How'd you know? So in the Middle East, you had sundials. But that only divided the sun time. You can't use a sundial at night. So how do you know what time it is at night? How do you divide the night? So the Talmud discusses this question of how do you divide the night? How many units of time, known as watches, do you divide the nighttime into, 3 or 4? Interestingly, so the Talmud says, so assuming that it's 3,
Right.
how do you know what time it is?
Right.
So it's all based on biorhythms. It's all based on biorhythms. That at the end of the first watch, I think it's the donkey brays. Donkeys bray at third watch. Dogs start yelling at the end of the second watch. And then towards the morning, it's actually very beautiful. That's when the baby wakes up and wants to be nursed. And the wife will sit there and talk to her husband. And the commentary, Rashi says, you begin to stir a little bit, you talk to each other and whatever. This is sort of like natural flow, this sort of natural rhythm of life, which is built into our biological clocks, and that's what you follow. So, anyways, the Talmud then goes on and says that that at the beginning of every single one of beginning or end of every single one of these watches, these periods of time, God up in heaven roars forth that he's upset, that he's sorry, that as it were, that he exiled the Jews from Israel and he destroyed the temple, and he pains he's painful, he feels pained by the exile and the sufferings of the exile of the Jews in exile. So he roars in pain. Later on, there's another story which I won't go into, but which describes the similar scene of God expressing his pain over the destruction of the temple, which of course he wrought, but which we brought upon ourselves. And there it says, no, the voice is not the voice of a roaring lion. The voice is that of the echo of the cooing of a dove. Now, I don't know I haven't really thought about what that means, okay? But it's clearly two different, I never noticed there were two different takes on the kind of emotion and the kind of modality and the kind of experience that's described as to how one relates to exile. Is it a soft whimper or is it a roar of pain? Now, again, I'm going to have to think about what that means, but I never ever know. I never really paid attention to the fact that this is the exact same phrase, the exact same situation, framed in a totally different voice. And that was, I've looked at this literally hundreds of times.
So just 2 little anecdotes. Is one, you were talking about the excitement of how accepted Daf Yomi, the learning of Talmud, has become, and there are some supermarkets in Israel today that were selling
the first volume of
brachot for people to start and purchase and start learning.
Look at the Art Scroll
supermarkets.
The Art Scroll publication company, which puts out the Schottenstein Talmud, discounted the first volume. Instead of being 88 shekel or 90 shekel, it's 50 shekel. Get yourself started and keep going, and as you need it, buy one, and that's how you make a set. I mean, make sure that they keep printing, and I have a situation where I would buy volumes of certain things as they came out, and then they changed the format, and I'll forever be short one volume. But that's
another childhood anecdote of mine is I remember my father learning Daf Yomi with dial-a-daf. You ever dial-a-daf?
Used to dry out.
You used to call up on them before no internet, right? 1980s. You call up on the phone and you dial a number and you listen. Right, and you listen to the class, to the shir of Daf Yomi. And today there are WhatsApp groups. Today there are YouTube videos,
hundreds of podcasts, and in every language under the sun. It's really remarkable, and yet it makes me sad. It makes me sad that I was noticing, nothing can make me sad and depressed in my Twitter feed, which you're welcome, by the way, to follow if you want to see interesting things in 3 languages. Anyways, I was sad because so many people on my Twitter feed had absolutely no idea this was happening and did not relate to it, and that's. Nothing gets them out of their whatever their political soapbox is, and I find that really sad because at the end of the day,
and you're referring to fellow Jews,
yeah. Well, so the truth of the matter is that a friend of mine, actually, who was remarking on the women's ceremony last night, mentioned that Martina Navratilova
Yes.
actually retweeted his tweet
I saw that.
about the women finishing
Call that
shots.
to Ellie Fisher, yes.
So that's really, that's really remarkable. I mean, like who did he know that Martina Navratilova follows him on Twitter? And which is part of the, once you get past, on Twitter, once you get past a certain amount of people, you just don't go through how many people there are. The only time you'll do it is on Facebook when you get close to 5,000 and you want to make room for more people. So then you have to weed. There's nothing to do about it. But so non-Jews are very well aware of this. In fact, one friend of mine who's Catholic wanted to know what was the closest thing that this is. So there is this idea of daily lesson or divine lesson that you can do in the Catholic Church, but it's not. It's different because in the Jewish scale of values, study of Torah is the highest value in terms of any other activity you could possibly do. That doesn't mean that you don't do the other commandments, but in terms of in terms of what's more all-encompassing and much more, and what's really the top in terms of significance, it's Torah study. There's absolutely no question, to the point that it finds expression in an interesting law that you can turn a synagogue into a house of study, but you're not allowed to turn a house of study into a synagogue. In other words, restricted from study to prayer. They're restricted to prayer because that's downgrading. Whereas if you take a synagogue and you turn it into a place where you also study, then that actually is an upgrade. And Maimonides, and why is that? And the answer is, as Maimonides puts it, Maimonides, when he discusses the commandment to worship God, says you worship God both through prayer as well as through study. And in fact you do. And if you wish, it's like a conversation. So prayer is what we have to say to God, and study is what we end up hearing from God, whether it's through studying the Bible per se, which is the veritable Word of God, or the interpretation of the Word of God as passed on by those who are authorized to do so, the sages and generations, and so on. And now we not only have Talmidei Chachamim, the male students of the wise, we also have Talmidot Chachamim, some really remarkable women who are. I can give the man a run for their money. Yes, no question.
No, for sure. And again, beforehand, we were just talking about the juxtaposition of this growth in anti-Semitism taking place. The focus on finally there is focus on these anti-Semitic attacks and growth of anti-Semitic attacks, specifically in the New York area, specifically the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, those who are visually Jewish. And then the rally that took place yesterday in New York City, at the same time as all of this focus on the Daf Yomi and the learning Torah and the Siyam HaShas and the excitement of all of that. And a note that I noted, and again, this touches upon stuff we've talked about in the past, is that how much is going to be accomplished by the rally? Don't know, probably not much. There are plenty of issues to talk about specifically there. But it was definitely beautiful to see the outpouring and the unity of the Jewish people in the streets for a few minutes. But the true answer to anti-Semitism is the Jewish people's connection and development and growth of that connection with learning Torah. And that came about so powerfully just this past week with the Daf Yomi celebrations.
Well, it's interesting you should mention this because it reminds me of a teacher I had. I've had many very special teachers. By this stage, I like to talk about them because otherwise they might not be remembered. This specific teacher's name was Rabbi Dr. Isaiah Wolgemuth. Rabbi Wolgemuth was from one of the most senior and really fabled rabbinic families in Germany. He was born in the 19-teens, if I remember correctly. And at a very young age, his father died. A relatively young age, his father died, and he was asked to be the Rav of his town. His town was Kissingen in Germany. He stayed there as a rabbi of the town until 1938 when he was arrested during Kristallnacht, and the Nazis basically said, you have 24 hours to get out of Germany or else. So he left and brought his wife. Okay. Rabbi Wolgemuth ended up coming to Boston, and he joined the faculty of the Maimonides School. He was hired by Rabbi Soloveitchik to teach in in his day school. And I had him as a teacher at Boston Hebrew College. It's another story. So Rabbi Wolgamuth, among the things he was charged with by Rabbi Soloveitchik was to teach the meaning of the prayer book. It was called Biur HaTefillah, so that people don't just mumble words that they don't know, and even if they understand the Hebrew, there's certainly nuances, and they have to go into depth to understand things. So he taught that class for many, many years. Finally, many of his notes he turned into a book, which is called A Guide to Jewish Prayer, which I really, really highly recommend. It's a lovely, inspiring, and very thought-provoking book, and will certainly enhance anyone who uses the Hebrew prayer book of any version. It'll certainly enhance your usage of the prayer book. Anyways, what strikes me when you mention this was in the introduction to the book, he waxes. What's the word I'm looking for? I was going to say melodic, but that's not the word I'm looking for. He waxes. He reminisces, but it's a positive reminiscence. I can't. The word is escaping me right now. And he writes about how the golden age of German Jewry was the mid-1930s. And it's like, what? What are you talking about? The Nazis come into power. First of all, there's anti-Semitic things going on before 1933. Then Hitler comes to power. Immediately, there's a boycott of Jews. 1935 are the Nuremberg laws. Jews lose their citizenship, and Jews are attacked on the street. I mean, and then you get to Kristallnacht in 1938. What are you talking about? So he said, you would think that was crazy of me to say this, but the truth of the matter is that when things got really difficult, and the Nazis started slowly but surely starting to march to the final solution, and Jews were thrown out of their jobs, and they lost their citizenship, and whatever, they found solace in, they came back to their faith, and they find out to ask themselves the question, why is this happening? Who am I? What is this about?
Wait, who am I?
Not a matter of like what's wrong with me, and if I'm nice, they'll love me. Because one of the things that we have to forget is this idea that if we shape up, the anti-Semites will love us. It's not going to happen. Right. It doesn't happen. On the contrary, the more that you sort of try to find favor in the hands of those who hate, the more they'll despise you. The idea is that let's be more assertive about who we are. I mean, if this is the case, why should it just be why should I become targeted as a Jew for no reason, because there's nothing Jewish about me? Make it so. Let me find out what I'm about, and I'll be substantively Jewish. And Rabbi Wolgamuth describes how during those 5 years, 1933, 1938, there was an efflorescence of classes and studies and books, and people were, I mean, from a cultural point of view, Jews discovered Judaism, and from that point of view, they were happy because they knew who they were, and they were able to find within themselves the power and the strength to be able to stand up and to persevere in very, very, very bad situation.
Right.
So I think the model is correct. I think that's how Jews should answer. We should fight. We shouldn't. We should fight. We should fight for our rights. That those who are charged with defending us should defend us. I'm a big believer in Jewish self-defense as well, not vigilantism, but Jewish self-defense within the law. But by the same token, we are. That's what we have to find out. Be who we are, and pretending that we're something that we're not. Doesn't make anybody happy. It doesn't make the anti-Semites love us anymore, and it only leaves us empty because we're sort of like, why are they trying to kill us? There actually some interesting examples of circumstances like this situations like this. For example, there was a very famous actor who went through something not as dramatic as being attacked physically. There was a famous actor. His name was Stephen Hill. Stephen Hill was a famous graduate of the School of Method Acting, who Stella Adler, was that her name? Anyways, she and he.
What was the name of the show? The law show?
Well, hold on.
You don't want to say it?
He was originally so let me tell you. So
okay.
He was in the same class as Marlon Brando, and when he was an acting student, they thought that he was going to be a much better actor than Marlon Brando. They thought Brando was going to become nothing, and Stephen Hill was going to be whatever. And at some stage of the ball game, he played in a Broadway show about Sigmund Freud. And one of the lines in this play about Sigmund Freud was somebody screaming at him, "You're a Jew, you're a Jew, you're a Jew." It doesn't matter what you try to do in the medical establishment in Vienna, it's not going to help you at all. You're a Jew. And somehow that hit him. Because he said to himself, I don't know what that means.
Right, because Stephen Hill was a Jew.
Stephen Hill was Jewish, but he was totally similar. He had no Jewish education whatsoever. Somehow, this is sort of like an extreme case, somehow he ended up making the acquaintance of a famous Hasidic Rebbe, the Rebbe of Skvir, who lives up in Square Town in, this is his father, in upper upstate New York. Slowly, by getting to know this Skvir Rebbe, he became not only Orthodox, but he became Hasidic. And he raised his kids like that. And not long after, while this process was going on, he was hired to be the star of a brand new series called Mission Impossible. And he was the leading. Later on, the person who took his job, took over for him, was a guy. His name was Peter Graves. Peter Graves, for those of you who know, later on, he was Mr. Phelps in the Mission Impossible. Later, he was in More in Remembrance. He is his brother, who's again his name escapes me right now, was the star of Gunsmoke.
Who?
They were brothers. I can't think of his name right now.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Hill actually starred in the first season, 2 seasons of Mission Impossible, which was on forever. And then it turned out that there was no way to film this thing without doing it on Friday night. And he said, sorry. So he was a very sort of a wild guy. So he quit. And that was it. Later on, he ended up being hired in the 80s to play the DA, Adam Schiff. And it was kind of funny because Adam Schiff now was famous in Congress as part of the impeachment proceedings. But he has play Adam Schiff, who was the DA for all of the
whole series.
The whole series until he's finally retired and Waterston, whatever his first name is, Sam Waterston took over.
Wait, so what was the name of the show?
The show Law and Order.
Law and Order.
He was the DA for Law and Order. What people don't know is the fact that he, in almost every scene, he is shown sitting without a head covering, because he asked the rabbi and said, "Well, if you're sitting there, just whatever, not moving around, you can go without a head covering. And if you ever see him outside, there's an outside shot. He's always wearing a hat."
Oh my God! I never paid attention to that. Wow!
And all of his scenes would be filmed during the week. When they film TV shows, they always do. They do this a lot of time. Movies also, they don't film in order. They film whatever.
And just to fill in the blanks, and basically, he did not make it greater than Marlon Brando because he took a hiatus
correct.
To study Judaism and went to learn how to be a Jew, and that's.
And he was actually a very fine actor. He's a very understated actor, but a very, very fine actor. So this kind of thing. So this kind of dynamic of I might as well find out who I am. The truth, you know what? I have a theory. I'm going to sort of let it out here. I have an actual theory as to a phenomenon that we've talked about a lot here. I've talked about the sort of what I see as a mini Renaissance, a return to Jewish identity in the state of Israel in the past almost 25 years. And the question is, why did that happen? So there are all kinds of different theories. If you're interested, I just found out that this book that I had recommended, I think, a few months ago, called Israeli Judaism, has been translated into English, and that's what it's called, Israeli Judaism by Shmuel Rosner and Camille Fuchs. I highly, highly recommend it if you really want to get a sense of the cultural pulse of the people. So I've been wondering, why did it happen? So there are all kinds of any historian who tells you that this happened, that A happened because of B, don't pay attention, because there's no such thing as any historical phenomenon that occurred because of any one issue. It's always a confluence of factors the most you can say is that from this point of view, this factor was critical. From that point of view, this factor was critical. But it's always a confluence of factors that leads to a certain development. There's always a lead up to that which sort of prepares the way. Historical causality is an incredibly complex and very highly nuanced business, which often historians use that kind of phraseology to say that they haven't got a clue why something happened. Anyways, I think that one of the things that happened, because it begins to be very, very intensified after the Second Intifada, or the Oslo War, however you want to call it. The Oslo War, or the Second Intifada, which wasn't a popular uprising, it was a war. It was a hot war, not a cold war.
So the beginning of the 2000s.
2005, basically. It did a few things. First thing it did was pretty much buried the somewhat naive hopes of immediate peace between us and the Arabs, or us and the Palestinians, for the overwhelming majority of Israelis. But it was more than that. It became very clear that something that people from Moshe Dayan all the way down to Shimon Peres, and don't forget Peres was one of Dayan's students or disciples. Peres, and from Dayan to Peres was a huge school of thought that maintained that the confrontation between us and the Palestinians was basically ethnic or national, that it wasn't religious. And one of the reasons why the Temple Mount was given over to the Waqf in 1967 by Dayan, because I don't want this Vatican. I don't want this to become a religious issue. Now, what was stupid was because it has been a religious issue from day one.
Right.
And I think we've discussed this as well. Opposition to the presence of Jews, or to the presence of the state of Israel, or to the return of Zion has been fundamentally Muslim since day one. That doesn't mean there weren't other variations, but this was really the major overarching point. In any event, that became very clear during the Second Intifada, that the opposition to us is based on religious concerns. And I think that the shock of encountering jihadi Islam, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the fact that the PLO, that the Fatah, pretty much broadcast on the same wavelength, I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of Israelis. And I suspect that you have something similar here as well, that this idea that, they're coming at us in the name of their faith, and I know nothing about mine, not talking about being Orthodox, but without being Jewish and being qualitatively Jewish and so on. I think that was a major contribution to the shifting of self-perception, self-identification you find among Jews in Israel today, which finds expression in the findings of this book, about which I have a review coming out next month.
Oh, right.
Excellent. So it's part of it's part of that meshing.
So it's interesting. On that point, following that point, I mean, we didn't get to talk about my whole trip to America a few weeks ago. One of the experiences was a panel session about anti-Semitism in America at a conference I was at. One of the people on the panel was Elon Carr, who is President Trump's envoy on anti-Semitism, to fight anti-Semitism in North America.
Wow.
And there were a few other people on the panel. In any case, I got up at the end to ask a question. And my question was to the panel members, including Elon Carr, was true or false? This is something that I believe to be true dealing with anti-Semitism. I'd love to hear your thoughts, agree or disagree. What did I say? I said, it's wonderful you're all talking about fighting anti-Semitism. However, and this we've talked about, I believe the post-Holocaust bubble has burst.
Right.
The anti-Semitism today is not new. It's actually old. We're blessed not to have it because of the taboo after the Holocaust.
Right.
It's back. It's normal.
Right.
And instead of the focus on fighting anti-Semitism, we're not going to make it go away. the majority of our focus should be strengthening the Jewish identity of the Jewish people to better deal with this reality of anti-Semitism that has returned.
I mean, that's a byproduct. The fighting anti-Semitism is not a reason to be Jewish.
Right.
Remembering the Shoah is not a reason to be Jewish, because it may be a motivating factor, it may be something that causes you to think about something, but it has to be proactive. It has to be, for me, it has to be qualitative for being Jewish per se. Now that the result of that may very well be that I'll have the strength to be able to take on those who hate me, and I'll be able to do all kinds of other things. But I think it's a good by itself. I think that I don't fight anti-Semitism because I want by studying what it means to be a Jew. Encountering Jew hatred leads me to wonder what I am per se on my own, and that would be something would be important to me whether there is Jew hatred floating around or not. Right. So I think that's a problem. American Jews spent far too much time with self-defense organizations, and we're far too obsessed with I mean, I'm not far too obsessed, but far too much emphasis on those who hate us, and basically protected the shell while having the shell be empty because they didn't invest in Jewish education and in Jewish self-awareness and in Jewish culture and in Jewish religiosity and in Jewish values. I mean, Jewish values, not necessarily just what everybody else thinks. So you end up protecting the shell, but the shell is hollow.
Right. And that goes exactly to what I was trying to touch upon. And they ended up agreeing with me because all their focus was educating more people about the Holocaust, more educational programs of non-Jews about the Holocaust, etc. And my point was, wait a second. Let's focus on the Jews and strengthening the Jews. That is the ikar, as we say. That is the more important focus than teaching about the Holocaust.
I'll tell you something about the Holocaust. First of all, we should study more what went on before, what was destroyed, rather than just how they put us to death. But I had an interesting encounter when I lived in the States. There was a local supermarket that was run by two couples. Both couples had survived the war, and I think all four of them had been in Auschwitz. Actually, certainly the men were, and there was this. There was this discussion about a local rabbi who was really very much a Holocaust activist, and there was discussion about taking the ashes of people who were burnt in the mass pits and so on, and bringing them to Israel or to America. I wasn't sure exactly what happened. And one of the wives, we were just talking. I was standing, when you're standing in line to check out at the supermarket, you have plenty of time to talk. So I happened to be talking to this woman who was married to one of the owners. And she said, none of this speaks to me. He says, that's their history. That's not my history. What they did to me is not the essence of my history. They have to choke on what they did, but it's not mine.
Right.
That's their problem.
That's a fabulous point. And it's getting late. One final point to Brian. I think it brings it all together as well. Again, in this atmosphere of the Torah learning and the Daf Yomi and the celebrations, I heard this one story of someone who found or was shown a Mishnah, right, a tractate of Mishnah that was printed in Germany, I imagine the beginning of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, even before the printing of the Mishnayot, of the Torah, the printer printed a message, right? Just a publisher's message, a publisher's note. And it was a note saying that whatever laws that are discussed in the Mishnah, the Talmud, dealing with non-Jews, does not apply to Germans. Because Germans they're not normal and they're the best of civilization, and therefore whatever laws of the Jews' interaction on Germany, of dealing with non-Jews based on the history of bad history, does not apply to Germans. Right. And that was like, for people seeing that was like an aha moment, which brings us back again to dealing with today. Okay, well, America's been great to the Jews. How is anti-Semitism growing in America today? Where is this coming from?
Jew hatred is I would not, God forbid, accuse everybody, whatever, but Jew hatred is built into the DNA of Western civilization, and it even precedes Christianity. The person who originated the accusation that Jews have all the money and that they run things from behind the scenes was none other than the great orator, philosopher, and statesman Marcus Tullius Cicero in 62 BCE. So it's a very, and it goes back to Haman and Achashverosh. But I'd like to take your story and raise you one.
Please.
At the conclusion of the Talmud in New Jersey last week, the final, you go to the last page of the last volume and you start at the beginning of the first volume. The volume that was used to conclude the Talmud comes from a really very unique set, of which a copy of one of which I actually had seen when I was younger. Within a few months after World War II ended, I believe it was in Dachau, at the request of some of the inmates and some of the Jewish chaplains, the United States government, the United States Army, funded the publication of a full set of the Talmud that was printed in Dachau. The frontispiece shows barbed wire and watchtowers and then freedom. It's yellow and it's all written on a yellow facade because of the yellow badge. But the idea was that the Nazis did not only try to destroy us physically, they tried to destroy us spiritually. And as a result, the first thing they're trying to restore to life the inmates that were there, but also we're going to publish a full set of the Talmud as a statement. And they used that Gemara, they used that edition to complete the Talmud in 2019.
If I may,
2020.
If I may, just to fill in that story, because I heard that as well, and I think they told.
By the way,
there.
I urge everybody who's listening, go into Google and write down Talmud, say concentration camp, something like that, and you'll see. I'm sure you'll get a picture of this sort of frontispiece that will come up.
All right, and the story, and the other part of the story of where did that come from, because the American Army didn't come into Dachau saying, okay, let's print the Talmud, is that one of the generals or one of the American officers came to an elderly Jew that was just that survived Auschwitz, and he goes, what do you need? What can I get you? And he said, I think it was, I need a
Baba
right? I need a page of Baba Kama, which is one of the tractates of the Talmud. He goes, wait a second, no, you need food, you need clothes, what can I get you? No, I want a page of Baba Kama. And it was all of a sudden that the American officer realized, wow, that we have to fulfill the spiritual needs of the Jewish people, and therefore they printed that Talmud.
Correct.
Unbelievable.
Correct.
All right, Rabbi Professor Jeffrey Woolf, it is a pleasure
Always
once
a
again.
pleasure.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please share. And signing off from the eternal and ancestral homelands of the Jewish people, here in the Judean Hills. Take care, everyone. Shalom.